Checking connection and live. Hi, everybody. I am here, Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, joyful vegan, in California, enjoying our beautiful weather, offering myself to you for any questions you may have. Lots of great things happening. Too much. Abundance is what I call it, abundance management. I'm in abundance management mode because so many good things are happening. Unlike last year, I have more mind space to focus on things, thank goodness, because last year was a very difficult year dealing with some family issues. But this year, I'm so grateful that space has opened up, bandwidth-wise, and I'm able to focus, but it also means that my brain is like flooded with all of this content and all of these things I want to produce, and it's all happening so quickly. And those of you who are following me are seeing what's happening with the CPG vegan trips. We were just featured in Forbes, a wonderful article about vegan travel in Forbes, which was lovely, and CPG vegan trips was featured, and I'm so grateful. And those trips are filling up, but we have room, so we opened a second trip to Rwanda. We're staying in Rwanda for 5 weeks so that we could have a second trip, and because the first trip sold out in 48 hours. So this is in 2019, so plenty of time, but that's available. The Alsace trip, the magical Christmas fairy tale trip in December of this year, is filling up, but we need to fill up by March 10th, which is just 2 days after my birthday. So birthday present, make your decision now if you're thinking about it at all. And then Vietnam, and then the Compassion in Action Conference, which I am so excited about and just want to spend all of my time focusing on the content. Hello, Tofu Tammy from Scottsdale. Good to see you too. And writing all the content all the time. And we've got so many wonderful speakers who are coming. I cannot wait to share with you, and I will be talking about the speakers we're having come. I handpick the people very carefully, and right now I have 2 fabulous women accompanying me, and I'm already working on some more, but the focus is on compassion. The focus is on how we can manifest our compassion in this world for the animals, having compassion for ourselves, so self-compassion, compassion for others, compassion for animals, how to deal with the strain that comes from what people in the past have called compassion fatigue, but I actually don't like the expression compassion fatigue because it implies that the problem is that you have too much compassion, and that's not the problem. The problem is that the compassion is the thing that feeds us. The thing that depletes us can be overactive empathy and not taking care of ourselves, not actually showing compassion for ourselves. So I'll be talking about that in the conference, how to care for ourselves as advocates, how to just care for ourselves as human beings in a way that's not self-indulgent, that's actually necessary in order to be sustainable, in order to be sustainable as a human being, but also as an activist. Willow says, I know you have good people to look after your babies, but I know you will miss them so much. Yeah, that's going to be the hardest. The hardest thing is that I will be away from my cats for 5 weeks. There's no doubt about it. That is the absolute hardest thing. And I do have good people, but yeah, that's going to be the hardest thing. Yeah. I'm loving your IG. Thanks for being such an inspiration. Thank you. Thank you. How do we say your name? Isassy. So, yeah, so we'll be talking about the most effective forms of advocacy. I was just talking over on Facebook about how to gauge effective forms of advocacy, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. You may not be surprised to know I have thoughts about a lot of things. And if you have any questions about any of those thoughts, I am open to hearing them. We will be talking about, as I said, self-care, self-compassion, dealing with empathic distress, which is my term, well, the term that I'm using instead of compassion fatigue, because I don't like that term. We will be talking about turning your advocacy into a career, or for anybody who's ever considered, I care about animals, I do this job that I don't love, I want to do something that's more meaningful. How do I do that? We're going to be talking about that. We are going to be talking about zero waste living, which is now a huge part of my life, which is completely overwhelming and wonderful at the same time. And I can't keep up enough because I have so much to talk about, and I'm trying to do it in the blog. I need to write the podcast episode on this, but There's so much. I am quite literally in abundance management mode, and it's really overwhelming. But it's all good things. That's why it's called abundance management. Levitt Chong, thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's certainly not original. There are many wise people before me who have talked about this, but as you know, words matter, and talking about being overwhelmed, especially as caregivers, people who are caregivers, people who are working in the rescue field, people who are in working for rescue organizations, working with animals directly, and then anybody who's in any kind of caregiving field like nursing or anything like that, working in nursing homes, working with people who are sick, working with people who are dying, working with people who are older. I mean, there's so many aspects of caregiving, and as we know that people in those industries tend to care about themselves and have self-compassion a lot less, so they wind up being over fatigued and stressed, and they get sick, and so there's a lot to talk about. But the problem isn't that they have too much compassion, that the compassion becomes fatigued. The problem is that they're not, in my opinion, working on mindfully cultivating compassion such that it is the thing that actually protects them from the fatigue, which could be an overstimulation of empathy, which is different than compassion. Empathy is very, very different than compassion. Someone asked me, Dependopotamus, that's awesome. What inspired you to go into no waste? It just felt like a natural extension from my desire to not impose my being on the rest of this world. Everything we do is an intrusion upon somebody in this world, and that's the last thing I want to do. Now, the only way to really remove my intrusion onto other beings in this world is to remove myself from this world, and that's not an option, right? So, so I'm not going to off myself, and so what are the options to actually live in this world, but do it in a way where my intrusion is limited? Reduced. And so as someone who's vegan, has been vegan for 20 years, I already considered myself, and you can read my first blog post about this at joyfulvegan.com. I already fancied myself a pretty conscious person, fancied myself someone who is mindful about what I buy, is mindful about not creating waste. I have rainwater tanks. I have our plumbing has been gray watered, so water goes out, so we're not wasting it. I already took all of my canvas bags. I've been doing that for years. So I did a lot of things already, and yet there was still a lot that I wasn't seeing. And so it has really just... what's been most challenging is just the way I know new vegans feel when they first become vegan, which is everywhere I look, I see plastic. Everywhere I look, I see an intrusion upon other beings. And it keeping that in check and just really trying to stay focused on what I can do is it's psychically overwhelming as well, which I know again is what one of the, what the first stages what I've talked about when you first become vegan, just being overwhelmed by all of what's around you. Thanks, Tofu Tammy. I think it's the first time I've actually put it that way. That's why these kinds of videos are actually good for me too, because I think about things in a way that I hadn't before based on questions you ask. So the most challenging has just been being overwhelmed by it. I was just talking on Facebook. People were asking me about they live in an area where they don't have farmers markets. I live in California. Of course, it's more convenient here. Of course, in the sense that we have farmers markets every day of the week, several miles from me. We're at any day of the week, any time of the year. But I also shop at grocery stores, and there are plenty of grocery stores that have vegetables and produce that are not packed in plastic. But it's also forcing me to make decisions that say, I used to get blueberries all the time, the frozen blueberries from Trader Joe's I loved, and I'm not getting them anymore. So that kind of changed the way, I loved those frozen blueberries. I genuinely love frozen blueberries. I actually like frozen blueberries more than I like fresh blueberries. So yes, I can buy fresh blueberries and freeze them, but they're not in season right now. Not any that are not wrapped in plastic. So, okay, what does that mean? I'm eating more apples. I'm eating more strawberries. I'm eating more everything else that's available at the farmer's market or at the grocery store that's not wrapped in plastic. So it's just being mindful of those kinds of choices. Right now, I would say the biggest challenge in terms of something that I haven't figured out an answer to yet is cat litter. So I know there are cat litters where you can flush the litter, and I'm looking into them. But with cats, you also have to be mindful of not stressing them out. You can really stress them out and overwhelm them by changing something in their routine. They are such sensitive little beings, aren't you, Charlie? Very sensitive. So so when you switch cat litters, you have to kind of do it slowly. So I'm doing it slowly, and then and they're taking to the new litter, which is good. But I then have to see how the new litter works on its own. So those are the kinds of things, like, it's taxing. I've changed a lot of things in our house. My husband is a saint because he is going along with me, and not only in his own life, just trying to make better choices in his own life. Of course, in our home, he's really going along with everything, and he's just such a trooper. He's just the best. I'm just so grateful for him, because it could be a lot harder, just like when someone becomes vegan, if you don't have your partner joining you on it. So I'm very grateful for that. I love your point of view and wisdom, like the post you put on Instagram. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. You're going to make me cry. Willow Sita, I'm at work and letting my non-vegan coworkers listen to your compassionate wisdom, planting the seeds. Well, hello, everybody. Where do you work? Where are you all? Do you make a lot of your own cleaning products? I've been looking at videos today, and I want to start doing that. So yeah, and the cleaning products, I still have, one of the things I've said in my post is that this is a journey and it's a process. I didn't start from ground zero. So I have things that I'm, slowly using that will be gone, and then I'll replace those with zero waste things. So I do still have some cleaning products that are in their plastic bottles, etc. So I'm switching those things. Number one is, yes, we have glass cleaner, which is just water and vinegar. Water and vinegar can be used for so many things. We use baking soda, but, that kind of thing. So yeah, so I'm doing that. But also we have, I have to go see exactly where. I think I might wind up going to probably Rainbow Grocery in San Francisco. But there are soaps and cleaning products like Dr. Bronner's that I can actually get refilled from stores, but honestly, even that, it's still products and whatever. So there's a lot to be done, and there's so many people who are blogging about this and who have books about it. Don't get me started, Lasassy. I'm just kidding. I don't know how to say your name. I'm going to call you Lasassy. I have thoughts. About a book. Just going to say, but I've got 3 books, 2 of which are already in proposal form that my agent is shopping around, one of which I'm supposed to be getting an offer on in the next couple days, and we'll see if it's the right fit. I don't know yet, and then I want to focus on that book, and then I can tell you about it, and then I'll tell you about the other books. So abundance management. Tofu Tammy says, do you use essential oils with vinegar cleaning products so it doesn't smell like vinegar? I haven't yet. I don't mind the smell of vinegar, but I do use citrus. So I haven't used essential oils because that will also affect the cleaning. So for instance, if I'm using vinegar and oil for window cleaning and glass, I don't want to put oils in it, but you can put something like lemon juice in it. Just squeeze some lemon juice in it. And I have found that to work. And that also helps with the cleaning too, is the acid from the citrus. You've been vegan and compassionate for so long. Do you still follow feeds on social media about animal abuse? That's a really good question. I prefer a proactive rather than a reactive approach to my life and to my activism. So I will be really honest. I just before came over to Instagram, feed restarts, and there was a horrific photo of an animal in absolute distress and the effect of a horribly violent act. I don't know the details because I had to turn away. And I don't feel that me turning away from that moment is doing a disservice to that particular animal, because I need to do it at a time and when I am prepared for it. So what's happened, and this kind of goes back to that empathic distress, if we're constantly confronted by images of animal abuse and stories of animal abuse, we will have empathic distress. We will feel so overwhelmed that we want to go away completely, right? I mean, if you think about the 3 elements of fear, the three reactions, right? You've got flight, fight, and freeze. And one of the things that happens when people are so consumed by images of abuse and being having their empathic system overstimulated is you could just go into complete flight mode. And that's what happens, I think, to a lot of advocates, and that's called burnout. So I prepare myself. I have a practice of making sure that I feel I'm in a state where I can go look at things, and then I do go look. And I choose the things that I look at. And there are times that it's very difficult and I cry and I feel that because my compassion is guiding me, I can look at those things and then go do what's necessary to work for animals, right? But if we're constantly reacting, then I think that's where it's really dangerous for us. And I think that's where people get burnt out. And Tofu Tammy says, I can't watch those videos anymore. It gives me so much stress and I can't stop seeing the torture. I know, and I don't participate in that, so I don't need to see that anymore. That it's too much. So I understand. Now, I do think there's an argument for at least dipping your toe into bearing witness, even if you know it, even if you've seen it, even if you're aware that that it happens. I do think that if we are so far removed from it as well, then we can forget. And there is a danger in that too. But that's why I'm saying it has to be proactive. It cannot be reactive. It cannot be just like scrolling through these feeds or just happening upon a feed or looking at the news all the time and being so exposed all the time to all of these, this trauma. That's, I think, what burns people out. And we have to be honest with ourselves about when we can handle it. But I do think what enables us to be able to handle it is a practice of mindfulness and compassion. And that is literally a practice in our daily lives to exercise that muscle of compassion that strengthens us and feeds us rather than depletes us. Does that make sense? So you have the shield, you have the protection, you have the strength, you have the means to be able to confront it. And there is evidence. There is evidence that people who do mindfulness practices around compassion, whether it's meditation or mindfulness or whatever it is, contemplation, any kind of practice where we're really cultivating our compassion, there's evidence that people who do that, because they don't avoid suffering. People who are, in these kind of mindfulness practices don't avoid suffering, but they can tolerate it and they can bounce back from the trauma of, seeing abuse much more quickly. So that's why a practice of compassion, and I don't mean practice of compassion like I'm vegan, I'm compassionate. I mean quite literally exercising that muscle that enables us to use the compassion to withstand all of the horror in this world, because there's a lot of horror. Does that make sense? So treating it proactively rather than reactively. Tofu Tammy, I need to find a sitter for my fur baby so we can get to the compassion week, and I need the knowledge. Oh, well, good luck with that. Well, I manifest for you finding a wonderful, responsible, compassionate sitter for your babies so that you can come to the Compassion in Action Conference. It would be a delight, and I hope you find them. I always find that when we really when we ask for what we want and we're specific, we find it. I'm always amazed at how that happens. So you're welcome. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any other questions, I will give it just a couple more minutes. So if you have any more questions, I give my body the best. Sorry, my husband's literally texting me now. I have been vegan 19 years. It'll be 20 years next year. My husband's sending me kisses. Very inappropriate right now, David. I'm on Instagram. 19 years? 19 years. Yeah, 19 years. And then a few years before that, vegetarian. But it took, it was a whole journey because I stopped eating land animals, as many people do, but I was still eating aquatic animals. And then I stopped eating everything that came out of or off of an animal. Kitties, one of them's right here. Come here, Charlie. He's right here. Come here, Charlie. See that box back there? See that box? That's a box that the kitties like to sit in. So my husband says that our house looks like a shanty town because I keep boxes for the cats. Charlie, come here. Here it comes. It's Charlie. Come here, Charlie. What's the matter? Come here. Come on. He's a good boy. He's a very good boy. Hold on, I gotta fix this. Give my body the best. Let me see what you... Come here. Come on. There he is. Do you have any kids? Do you have kids? If so, do they transition as well? This is one of the biggest challenges for me, transitioning the kids. So no, I don't have any children. I only have fur babies. And I do talk a lot about transitioning children and the family and partners and everything in the 30-Day Vegan Challenge. So if you haven't checked out the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, that's the kind of stuff I cover, and you can absolutely find it in my podcast as well. So I talk a lot about that. And there's a lot to say. And, you know, a lot of it has to do with, you know, just letting the journey happen, talking to your kids about why you're making the decisions you're making, but also when you're transitioning them with the food, not making such a big deal about the food. Like, I know we want to say to them, we want them to know that a change is happening, and I don't know how old your kids are, but that can also scare kids and adults who are just big kids, because people hate change. We just avoid change at every turn. So not making such a big deal about it when we're transitioning. So instead of saying, you know, this is a new meal and it's vegan and it's a vegan meal and it's good, it's vegan, try it, it's new, you're gonna like, you might have but try it. I think you're gonna like they're gonna be like, no, because it's just different. But if we're like, yeah, have this food, it's great food. And then they eat it, and then later you're like, yeah, it happens to be vegan. Sure, why? What's the point? We just calms everybody down. So anyway, that's just one little piece of advice. Like the boxes more than the actual toys. Oh yeah, they totally like the boxes more than the toys. Are you kidding? Yeah, like tinfoil, like rolled up tinfoil that you flick, and boxes. That's all cats need. How to make veganism more appealing to men in general. Lots of love from Montreal. Thank you. How to make it more appealing to men. You know, I don't tend to think in those terms. I think all of us who are excited about the being vegan and who believe that it is a joyful, abundant, sustainable, compassionate way to live, I just believe that us living in that truth and in that joy and abundance and compassion is quite literally attractive, that people will be curious based on us just showing up fully. And then the things that people are individually concerned about, they have kids, they're men, and they think that they have to have meat to be strong, all of these paradigms. And I actually do have a podcast episode specifically on masculinity and meat, and all of the associations that go with that. But I do think that it's all the same stuff. It's all of just these myths that are created in our culture that we all perpetuate. And so I just think just kind of showing up and being as authentic as possible will be attractive to both men and women in terms of whatever their fears are. They're 14, 7, and 2. How can I join the challenge? Yeah, so the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, there's a paid version, which is only $39, which is, you get all of the content and recipes. It's at 30dayveganchallenge.com. You can join a free version at cowspiracy.com under Take Action. You just don't get everything. You get a lot. So you still get everything. And then, of course, there's the book. And at the 30-Day Vegan Challenge website, there's a package where you can get the book and the online program. So, and there's a discount for that. So that's where you can find it. But yes, definitely. That is why I created the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, is to be a guide and to answer all those questions. So I hope it can be a help to you. What can you say to new neighbors that invited you to their house for dinner? I know I can offer to bring a dish. How do you word it to sound polite? Yeah, I think it's just that those first interactions with new friends and new neighbors. So they're new neighbors, right? So we have the most amazing neighbors, and everyone, of course, knows that we're vegan, and everyone knows that, you know, I'm gonna say I'm an animal advocate. David's obviously cares about animals, but they know I'm the animal advocate and that we're vegan. And it's so sweet now because now that's how they associate me. So they'll say, "Oh, we just saw a fox. I just saw a fox and I was thinking of you." Or there was this animal and I thought of you. Like, people now just make that association. But it's the initial, how do I deal with it with new people who haven't met me yet? How do I do it for the first time? You just do it. You just say, "What a wonderful invitation. I just want to let you know I'm vegan, and it's not, please don't be overwhelmed by that. It's a lot easier than what you might think. So please, I'd love to answer any questions you might have. I'd love to bring a dish. I'd love to help you." Just be really transparent about it so that it's not awkward. I would recommend doing it in person because you don't know how they're going to take something that's written. And there's such a weight to like writing an email about something like that, right? It just feels more weighted than if you're just talking to your neighbor in person. So if they're your neighbor, obviously they're inviting you. So they're your neighbor, they're close by. So I would either knock on their door, or I don't know how much you run into them on the street and say, "I'm so excited to come to dinner. That is so sweet. I don't know if you heard from the rest of the neighbors, but we're the vegans on the street. And we would love to, to come to the dinner. Is there anything I can bring? Do you have any questions that I can answer?" Does that help? And then once that first initial, experience is over, you won't have to deal with that again. But there's, this is the stuff of life, people. Like, this is it. It is not on Facebook. It is not on Instagram. It's not on Twitter. The stuff of living and the stuff of relationships takes place in real life. It takes place on the streets, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in the shopping grocery store. I mean, it's all of the interactions we have with people in real life that matter. Like, that's what matters. So go and do that. Like, go and talk to your neighbor. Just talk to them. And they will if they're kind enough to invite you over for dinner, they'll be kind enough to be open to you being vegan. It's not that big a deal. It's always, of course it's awkward, but it's such a great opportunity. And it's such a great opportunity to just say, "Okay, this is difficult for me." I always say, put the words in my mouth and the love in my heart and help me to speak the truth. I do that before I talk to you. I do that before I have an interview. I have an itchy nose. I do that before I speak to a crowd of people. I just say, put the words in my mouth and the love in my heart and help me to speak the truth, right? That's it. Just kind of centering my thoughts to wanting to just have the best interaction I can while acknowledging that it's difficult and just inviting a different way of being. And it helps. So I want you to report back to me how it goes. There's nothing to be afraid of. Approach the situation with love and compassion, and that's what you'll get back in return. Okay? What did someone say here about Miyoko? Oh, wait, let me go back. Great idea. I always bring Miyoko's cheese. It's always a win, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's not just about, of course, if it's a party or a potluck, you can just bring whatever's vegan. And of course, people are like, "Oh my God, it's vegan. I can't believe it's vegan," like all that, right? But if it's someone's home you're going to, you don't want to feel awkward at the moment where you're about to sit down and they've, made a steak for you or dairy. Like no one wants to feel bad, right? So you just cut that, what's the expression? You just, I forgot the expression. You just take care of it beforehand so it's not an issue. I know, it's true, Tofu Tammy. It's very good. You're welcome, Kelsey Mar. I don't know your name. Thank you. You're so sweet. People have told me, well, plants are alive and they have feelings too. What would you say to someone who gives you that response to veganism? You may not be surprised, give my body the best, that I actually have a response to that. The one that you might want to look at is on YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel. There is a section in my YouTube channel called Vegan Point of View, and one of the questions is about plants and that plants have feelings too. I could easily tell you to just say to them, no, they don't, but that's not the answer they're looking for. So one of the things we have to do when we're communicating with people is understand what is it that they're asking, what are they really asking? Because they actually don't give a hoot about cauliflower and carrots having a soul. Like, they don't really care about, like, they're not staying up at night because they think carrots are, being tortured and cauliflower is being abused. Like, that's not real. What they're probably really saying, in my opinion, is, how crazy is this thing? Where do you draw the line? How far do vegans go? And if I were interested in this thing, how far would I have to take it? So they're kind of feeling you out. And if we answer the question that's been asked on the surface, that we're never going to get anywhere. But if we answer what they're really asking, then we're getting somewhere. It's an absolute diversion from what is the truth. So them talking about carrots screaming because they feel pain means that we're not talking, and that's theoretical, right? It's theoretical. So them talking about a theory about carrots means that we're not talking about a reality about animals. And if we let them dominate that narrative, then we've lost the narrative. I mean, we've just lost it, and we're not going to have a dialogue. Now, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily looking for a dialogue, but I also think that people are also just curious, and they may have heard something and they want to hear what your perspective is, kind of going back to that, how crazy is this? So I think personally, the answer, with all of that having been said, might be, yeah, the jury's out on that. But what the jury's not out on is that animals do suffer. And while I know for sure that that's the case, I'm going to do everything I can to not contribute to cruelty and suffering and violence against animals. Does that make sense? Tofu Tam says, I use recipes from your book when friends come over. Your food is always a hit with everyone. It's just great. Thank you very much. That really means so much. Really does. And I use my recipes too. They're my favorite. They're my favorite recipes, my recipes. Yes, report back. Charlie's out of here. He's tired of me screaming. What do you usually bring to parties for food? Good question. I like bringing things, I don't know, there's a part of me that wants to say I like bringing things that are already going to be based on familiar ingredients so that people don't go, oh, what's tempeh or what's seitan, right? But I actually also want people to have this experience of just whatever I think is the best. One of the things I always make for parties is my tempeh pate. It's in the vegan table. And I know people are not very familiar with tempeh, but whatever. It's an Indonesian staple, like, so they can get over it, right? And it's not like vegan food. It's an Indonesian staple. And then it's an opportunity to tell them what tempeh is. And I'm actually excited. I'm going to start trying to make some tempeh. I know, I'm so crazy. So I make my tempeh pate, and it is always a hit. People go bonkers for it because the texture's just right. It's creamy, but it's got some bite to it because the tempeh is firm. It's better than, making even like a chickpea pate. Like, it is so perfect. So I always bring that. I always bring some kind of dessert as well. So I like both. We have a lot of potlucks here at our in our neighborhood. We have a very magical neighborhood, and people are always really interested in what we have to bring, and they always love it. And then what's really sweet is that people go out of their way to make sure that there's always vegan food. And I would say, so we have a whiskey club with with some of our neighbors, and we just had a whiskey meeting, whiskey group, whiskey party, whatever you want to call it, whiskey tasting, with some of our neighbors just on this past Friday. And we rotate who hosts the whiskey parties. So our friends, Anna and Dinko across the street, they hosted. And I think everything they had there except one or two things were vegan. And there's no obligation to serve food, but they did. And they just made a point to say, like, that's vegan and that's vegan. And it was all just like, stuff from Trader Joe's and lots of things. And I would go to eat something because there's Trader Joe's. I'm never going to get them again because they're plastic, but damn it, they have these chocolate-covered salted almonds that are the best. we call them crack, just like we call the garlic aioli crack in our home. And they were there at the party, and I went to go eat them, and she's like, they're vegan. And I was like, I know these very well. They are indeed vegan. So they're just so sweet and kind, and I find that that's what people are mostly like. Good tofu, Tammy. I'm glad that helps. Yeah, the chocolate chip cookies, chocolate cake. I like bundt cakes. They just look kind of fancy. I think bundt cakes just look fancy. We have the most magical neighbors. We are just incredibly lucky. Pulled jackfruit always works for dishes in me. You can do it so many ways. That's interesting, Janelle. I have not come over to the jackfruit side. I've tried it in a lot of different forms and dishes and flavors. It's just the texture for me. It's not chewy enough. So I have an expectation that it's going to be chewy, and it's not. So I don't love it, but I'm so glad you do, and I'm so glad that works for you and that it's something you can share with people. That's awesome. But I have not joined the jackfruit club yet. Right now I'm just in the whiskey club. But I love making seitan for folks, and I had some neighbors over once the first time I had made meringue cookies, and it was really fun because these are all non-vegans for the most part. There are definitely some vegetarians on our street, but there aren't any. No, I think we're the only vegans. But there are vegetarians, and I had the ladies over, and I gave them meringue cookies, and they loved them, right? I mean, and then when they came over to our Christmas party, one neighbor in particular made meringue cookies, and I don't know, it's very sweet. It's very sweet. When you go out in a group, how do you kindly tell them you're vegan? When you know most aren't into that. Can you be more specific, Dependopotamus? Who are you talking about? You mean talking to if I'm out with a non-vegan group? Or are you talking about the restaurant? I'm just not sure. I'm just not clear because if I go out with a non-vegan group, everybody knows I'm vegan, and they all know I'm vegan. But if you're talking about them not knowing, I just tell them I'm vegan. I have no qualms about that. So if there are people you're going out with who are anti-vegan, well, I can't do anything about that, right? Again, we can only stand up and speak out and stand in our vegan joyfulness, and whatever someone does with that is not my problem. Like, they've never tried it, but against the idea of the food. Yeah, I mean, I think this comes back to the practice of compassion. I think this is a good note to end on. It comes back to the practice of understanding that my compassion is going to bring up issues in other people, that who we are is going to bring up issues in other people, and that's not mine to worry about. So being really clear where I end and another person begins is a form of compassion. Centering my mind and saying whatever happens at the effect of my being is not mine. So my being vegan, if it brings up something in other people, or they're going to have things to say, then that's not my problem. Right. And so hopefully you won't be excluded. I mean, look, if you're talking about them not wanting to go out with you because you're vegan, I see. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there are those kinds of situations we have to navigate, and we have to ask ourselves, what's the intention? What's the intention? So if you're going out with a group of people because you don't have friends on the military base and you want to have a community there, then what I would recommend is that you get clear about what your intention is. And that's your intention, like, okay. And you're gonna gravitate toward people who are already kind. If there are people if they're just jerks, I don't want to be friends with them anyway, right? So you're gonna gravitate to the people who are kinder. And that they're not vegan. I know you're not saying that that's an issue, but like that's not an issue. You just being who you are, in your joy, in your confidence, unapologetic, is what I would say. Listen to my podcast. Go listen to some episodes specifically on that. There's one called Speaking Your Truth. It's one of the most popular podcast episodes on Food for Thought. Go listen to that. Go check out some titles of other episodes that might be appealing to you around this topic. I talk about the social aspects a lot. And I'll tell you, I can't make any announcements right now. do that preemptively. But the project that I'm really anxious to work on next really has to do with giving all of you the answers to these questions in a book that have to do with the social and emotional and practical aspects of being vegan after you've become vegan. So 30-Day Vegan Challenge is the first part, and then I've got more to do, because this is really, like I said, where the rubber meets the road. So go check out the podcast episode, and Honey LeBlanc said, I reached out to a new local diner recently and expecting a no, asked if they had any vegan options. They were thrilled to tell me they're rolling out a vegan mac and cheese. That's fantastic. Yes. Is it possibly on your YouTube, because my phone podcast crashes a lot? The podcasts should all be in YouTube as just a listening form. So try on YouTube to type in Speaking Your Truth if you can't listen to it on your phone. But you can also listen on my website. It's not going to be a podcast, so if it's something you can just listen to on my website as a browser window, then that's an option as well. Janelle says, I figure out what I can eat there before I go, and I don't try to push it, but I do tell them. I've been through that several times. Excellent, Janelle. Thank you for your contribution. Honey says, I offered some unsolicited advice that all vegans secretly want is pancakes. Told them it would be major news if they made pancakes vegan. They told me they're on it. I was shocked. I love it. Just asking the question. Isn't that amazing? Thank you, Tofu Tammy. I hope you cover lapsing back to carnism. I did. Interesting, Levitt. I want to hear more about that. If you have any suggestions, if you have any questions that I have not answered, if you have questions that you want answered in a book, send an email to support@joyfulvegan.com. I hear you. We get these emails. I very much live to serve you, to serve the animals, not serve them. Not like, you get it. So send me an email, support@joyfulvegan.com. Sign up for the Compassion in Action Conference. I don't want to hear any more about it. You can sign up today and then have a friend join you for 50% off. Hello. And get on with the CPG vegan trips. I don't know what you're waiting for. I think I overinformed myself. The fight or flight response to stress we talked about. Levitt, we've got some work to do. Stay close. Go listen to the podcast. There's lots there for you. And surround yourself with kind, compassionate people, and do your own work around compassion as well. There's lots to do. Thank you, everybody. It was wonderful to connect with all of you. Have a wonderful night. This is Colleen, Patrick-Goudreau, for the animals. Thank you for watching.